Hello, everybody. I'm Catherine Frank. I'm the Chancellor at Stout, and I am so pleased that you were able to join us this evening for another student and family forum. And I have a collection of wonderful folks here with me this evening, and we've received several questions in advance, and we will be addressing those throughout the presentation. So if we go to the next slide, I'll give you a little bit of an overview about what our format is for this evening. And there should be plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the session. So we'll begin with a presentation, and I'll introduce the presenters in just a moment. We will address the questions that were provided in advance, and then we will move into a question and answer session. And so if you would like to pose a question, please use the Q&A function. And we have a moderator who is collecting the questions and throughout the presentation, and we will get to those during our Q&A session. After the session, we will post the recordings and responses to questions that were not answered, that we weren't able to get to during the Q&A portion of today's presentation. Those will be posted next week. And they'll be available on our COVID-19 website. And you can go there for lots of information that we will talk about that towards the end of the presentation. And at times there's a slight delay between slides due to the technology that we're using. So I'd like to introduce the folks who are here with me this evening. Glinda Lee Rodriguez is our interim provost. She's in charge of everything academic, and she will speak to you about fall planning in just a moment. Phil Lyons, Vice Chancellor for Administrative and Student Life Services, will address some of your financial questions. Sandy Scott, Dean of Students, everything students. That happens outside of the classroom, and sometimes that happens within the classroom as well. Sandy is our expert in those areas. Adam Ludwig is our Interim Director of University Housing, and Justin Cron is our Director of University Dining Services. All of these folks have been working really hard this summer to plan for our opening in just a few days. So on the next slide, as we talk about preparing for fall, we are going to move into a lot of detail, again, with your questions and concerns in mind, but just an overview of some high-level items. The Resident Hall student drop-off begins August 29th, so right around the corner, and continues through September 6th, 2020. This is different from years past, so we'll offer some details so that everybody is up to speed. On September 6th, from 3 to 7, all first-year students will arrive on campus. And September 7th through 8th is our week 1 orientation. And then all of you know that classes begin September 9th, and we are describing the experience as a modified normal, which our provost will discuss, a mixture of face-to-face, online, and hybrid courses. At this point in time, there has been no changes to the academic calendar. And then we have a team on campus that meets regularly. This is called the Recovery Planning Steering Committee. It's made up of leaders across campus, and we'll continue to meet weekly throughout the semester to address how things are going, to address any gaps, and to continue to plan as we move forward throughout the semester. So the next slide, just an update regarding some of the questions that you have about the fall calendar. I just want to emphasize, and you'll hear this throughout the presentation, that the health and safety of our campus and broader community are of paramount importance to us. We continue to consult regularly with public health as well as the UW System Administration, and we will continue to do that throughout fall semester. And then regarding our fall calendar, there's no one factor, and this is very important to note, no one factor would compel us to reconsider our fall semester plans. So instead, UW-Stout, along with the other UW campuses, we monitor a range of factors, and the range is broad. But a few examples include campus cases, isolation and quarantine capacity, community measures as we continue to evaluate the fall calendar. So it's no one factor that determines any sort of change to that fall academic calendar. Rather, it would be a combination of factors in consultation with public health and the UW System Administration. So with that, I would like to turn over the slideshow to Glenda Lee Rodriguez, our interim provost.
Thank you, Chancellor. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. So in the next series of slides, I want to just try to run through some key information around academics. Our faculty and instructors are so excited to have our students back that are able to join us in person, and we're very excited for the semester to begin. Over the summer, it was a really busy summer. So as you recall, if you were with us in the spring, the pivot happened quickly. And we spent the summer now really planning for a successful fall. We had regular meetings. We had close to a dozen meetings over the summer with different stakeholders. We've kept all of our resources for our faculty and instructors on our COVID-19 website. And we split into multiple summer subgroups working on areas such as technology and plexiglass and classroom cleaning and PPE, classroom management. We've been very intentional and coordinated on how to approach even the first week of classes and the types of communications that will be going out to students. So in terms of the types of classes, we have 4 options, and on the next slide, after I talk through a couple things here, I'll show you some snippets of what it looks like on your Access Stout schedule. So we've pivoted and we have approximately about 50% of our classes are still holding in-person activities, and that falls into 2 categories, in-person and hybrid. And then the other classes are within 2 options of types of online courses, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. As I mentioned in the spring when we needed to pivot, it was quite quick. So over the summer, we've provided very intentional and structured professional development available to all of our instructors, preparing for this flexible, modified normal. We also conducted a survey last spring. It was in April, and we heard from students. We read the feedback very closely, took it very seriously, and incorporated student and instructor feedback both into our professional development sessions that have occurred over the summer. We also launched a couple of new options for students. So we were hearing from some students that were concerned about starting off their semester or their year here at Stout, and we've created community experiences through general education cohort opportunities. So these are online classes. There's a range of classes to choose from, but it's very intentional to help build community with the students. We have a track for our new incoming students, and then we offer a track for our non-traditional students that are part of our customized instruction population. So here's the slide where I just want to talk briefly about the types of courses, and there's an infographic at the top which has some pictures, and then down below I've tried to include some snapshots from your Access Stout schedule. So 4 types of classes, face-to-face, and if you look at the image, obviously any in-person activities will be abiding by our social distancing, our mask wearing. There will also be cleaning and disinfecting protocols for those in-person activities. Hybrid is a combination of having in-person activities, and then some sessions will be held completely virtually. Then you've got your online synchronous, and so there's 2 different types of online, synchronous and asynchronous. So down at the bottom, I'm just going to kind of walk you from left to right where you can see some of the differences. So on the very far left, it says online, it's circled there. What that means is that it's more self-paced. You're still communicating with the instructor. There's still deadlines for when things are due, but it's more self-paced. That's why the days and the start says to be announced. So that's communicated with the instructor in terms of deadlines for your assignments. The middle snapshot shows online synchronous. And if you take a look there, you've got days and start and end times noted. So even though it's online, there's an expectation and a requirement that you are available to be online during those times for coordinated activities. The last snapshot along the right is for both hybrid or in-person activities. You'll notice there's a room location, the days, and the times. So this could be that a large class is divided into multiple groups, and a certain portion of the class goes on one day and the other class goes on another. Or it could be that you have a class that's been spread apart into multiple rooms, so everyone can come, but you'll be socially distanced in rooms that are adjacent to each other, and the instructor will be navigating those spaces. So there's lots of options, but primarily those are the four. And it's going to be very critical to be communicating with the instructor about the classroom management and protocols and expectations. I wanted to answer, oops, sorry, I still on that previous slide. There are questions have come in about wait lists. So we still do have wait lists for our courses, and we're monitoring that and actually even responding by potentially adding class sections if the wait lists get to a particular size. So if there are classes that you're trying to get into, I do encourage you to put yourself on the wait list because we use that information to understand the demand for the class. We also will still have our normal add drop period. So those dates are on the Registration and Records website, but we have an opportunity at the beginning of the semester where students can add or drop classes. So for example, if someone drops and you're on the wait list, you'll be automatically moved up based on the order that you're in on the wait list. And the reason I wanted to bring that up though, is that if you were to miss the first class meeting, you will probably have missed the explanation from the instructor around cleaning protocols and just overall classroom protocols. So it's going to be really important that if you get added to a class and you miss that first session, that you proactively please connect with the instructor to find out what you may have missed. So that way you can be brought up to speed as quickly and smoothly to make it a success. Thank you. Next slide. So for our on-campus activities, the campus will look a little bit different. You're going to notice that there's a lot of signage regarding directions of traffic flow within our buildings, and then as well as our expectations for the protocols in class with density. We've marked seats off that cannot be used to keep students at the social distancing distance. We are also requiring masks. And as I mentioned, there are cleaning and disinfecting protocols as well for our spaces. Instructors will be available to you, and so they'll be letting you know their virtual office hours and provide you with any other opportunities to connect with them. In terms of attendance, we've received questions about what will happen during my class if I become ill and I need to stop attending for an amount of time. That's going to be really critical for you to be communicating with your instructor about what the options are. We have asked all instructors to be ready to have virtual components made available to their students. And so it's going to be really important that you're communicating with your instructor about what options might exist. And the last thing I wanted to mention was about open labs. So Stout, very hands-on. We've got particular majors that have wonderful lab facilities and lab activities that require students to be in these spaces working on those activities. We are going to have a virtual sign-up option, so more information will be coming. We're going to coordinate open labs, much like we will coordinate study spaces across the campus that will be made available to students. So we'll be coordinating that. That's coming together, and in the next week they'll be pushing out a lot of information, and your instructors will have that information as well. So we want to have our spaces available to you, and we want to do it safely. So that's our goal, is to work through a very coordinated process to provide that access. So I mentioned briefly about study spaces. In particular, we've received questions from commuter students who are juggling both an online class and then needing to be on campus at a particular day and time to participate in in-person components. Please know that we are a laptop campus, so I recommend that you have earbuds, some sort of headphones, because there are spaces on campus that will be open and available, especially while the weather permits. You can even be outside. But we are coordinating study spaces in the library. There'll be spaces available in the student center. And as I mentioned, some of our academic buildings will also have spaces that are going to be coordinated through a virtual sign-up process. But our internet activity internet service will be reliable, and we look forward to just helping you be somewhat mobile as well through the laptop facilities that we have. And so with that, I will turn it over to the Dean of Students, Sandy Scott.
Thanks, Glendalee. And good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate this opportunity to communicate with you all. We've been planning to welcome you back to campus. So, and we know this is an exciting time for both our new and our returning students. And as you heard our chancellor mention, we have really prioritized the safety and health of the campus community. And sometimes that may mean that how you feel personally about something, like wearing a mask, for example, is still an expectation that we're going to have for you. And it's because everything we've done, every decision we've made has been about ways that we can protect this community, because we know how important being here face-to-face is to many of you. So thank you in advance for all you're going to do to ensure your part, because all of us play a role in ensuring that we are keeping this community as safe as we can. And a part of that safety is recognizing, of course, that with college comes freedom. And I want to take just a moment to really speak to our off-campus returning students. You know that as a student who moves off campus, you enjoy that greater sense of freedom. And that's part of what the college experience is about. But with those greater freedoms comes this year more than ever, greater responsibility. And please know that decisions you make, especially around hosting large gatherings, can really have an impact on the safety of the campus. So we are asking you to utilize your best judgment to make us all Stout proud, to recognize that social distancing still matters whether you're on or off campus. Masking still matters, of course, in the privacy with just your roommates of your apartment. Similar for our residence hall students who, when it's just that student and their roommate, they're not expected to mask. But doing and engaging in those same priorities off campus matters just as much as they do on when it comes to the overall well-being of the campus. So I know you can do it, Blue Devils. I know you can follow those expectations. And I ask that you recognize, for all of us to stay face-to-face, we need you. We need you to play your part. And there's going to be both those in-person communities and those virtual communities. And we hope you'll take options and opportunities to engage in both when you can, because while we know things are going to be different, we also know there are experiences that can feel very much the same if you choose to engage in those ways. And what, again, we can't lose sight of is the convenience that occurs when you're on campus or near campus and can take advantage of the many opportunities that are here for you. So the college experience is going to look different, but I know that you will all make the best of that, again, so that we can protect the health and safety of everyone. For off-campus students in particular, we have lots of important information to share with you. We've been doing that all summer, but I know that many of you, there's information along with items, your thermometer and your mask, that we want you to get. And the way we have designed for you to do that is to come to the Sports and Recreation Center on the dates and times that are listed there. It matches the laptop refresh dates and times. So for those of you who have to refresh your laptop, please plan on doing that and then taking a walk outdoors to head over to get your items, including a sustainable Safer at Stout grocery bag, as well as really other important information that we hope you will need, will look at and can utilize throughout the semester. So in general, on the next slide, we're going to start to talk about what can you expect? What is this going to look like? I think we've been talking all summer about the importance of masks, that they are going to be required in the classroom, in the residence halls, except for when you are in the privacy of your own room, or obviously when you are showering in the restrooms. And on campus, even outdoors, we are asking our constituents to all please know that we know that masks can make a big difference. And we ask for your cooperation. You will hear culture of cooperation over and over and over again. Keep in mind, we're in this together, and how we are going to get through this together is with everyone cooperating. Same is true for social distancing. Please make sure that you're paying attention to that 6 feet between you and another individual. We're going to talk later and much more in depth about testing and what that's going to look like, as well as isolation and quarantine. And then everyone will be getting a magnet that is a daily reminder. We'll hope you put that somewhere where you can see it every day, of the importance of monitoring symptoms and then contacting, if you're a student on campus, student health services. Off campus can also contact student health services or a local provider if you have one. So those 4 things are to be expected, are expected of all of our community members, and so we please encourage you to keep those at the forefront of everything that you do. I know some of you are going to have questions for those of you living on campus, so at this point I'm going to turn it over to Adam Ludwig, our Interim Director of Housing, and he'll talk through all things housing for you.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. Hi, everybody. My name's Adam Ludwig. We've actually, for the last just over a week now, have been training our student staff on campus. We have about 100 to 120 student staff who are back in training, and it's been fun to slowly increase the energy back on campus and test out a lot of the operations we've been planning for this semester. So I want to talk a little bit about what that semester is going to look like then, and that begins with an email that went out this week, the housing contract addendum. This essentially stated, or was asking for students' cooperation with the health and safety efforts that are going on here on campus, and by signing it, agrees to the routine antigen testing. And Sandy's going to speak a little bit more to what that testing looks like a little bit later. In regard to starting your experience here and moving on campus, some folks had asked about roommates and what, to know who that person is. And the best source for that information is actually logging onto the Housing Gateway and checking if you have a roommate, who that person is, how to contact them, where you're living, if you happen to forget that. So that is always good to hop on the Housing Gateway and check that before you're moving in to see who you're living with. Speaking of move-in, that does start, as Chancellor Frank said, on Saturday in just 2 days. We're really excited for a week-long move-in process. It starts every day at 8 a.m. and runs until 6 p.m. We have 3 residents per building moving in every 30 minutes for a smooth and socially distant process. We know this is a little different maybe than how it's been done before, but we're excited, and from our campus, from our partners across the UW system, we've gotten great feedback on how smooth this kind of operation has been running. So we're excited to roll that out starting on Saturday. For this process, when you are checking in, it's good to remember to only bring 1 car through that check-in line. That will help kind of keep that parking line moving through. If you are bringing an additional vehicle, you can rotate that other vehicle into your parking spot as needed. But for that check-in line, it's helpful just to bring 1 vehicle. When you arrive, you'll have a 2-hour move-in window. This 2-hour window is really just the unload time. It's the time spent in that parking spot in front of the building. If you need to spend more time on campus, of course, we encourage you to do so in a safe way. In that time, you'll also be getting your textbooks. Textbook rental knows you're coming that day based on the sign up, and they'll have gathered your books already. You should have information in your Stout email about that. And in the parking lot, when you check in, you'll get your Stout ID picture taken, and we'll pick that up at the campus card office. So a lot of items have been kind of set in line for you already, which has been super helpful as you're arriving and getting everything taken care of. As you're moving into your building, carts will be available for buildings that do have elevators. Otherwise, a dolly would be really helpful to bring with you, as we won't have any assistance in moving your personal belongings upstairs. But what quality family time in potentially sweating and bringing stuff up the stairs. So I hope you enjoy that time together. Our first year students, we're encouraging them to return on September 6th, that's the Sunday, between 3 and 7 p.m. Starting that day is when dining kind of moves into a more full operation, and you'll have food options available for you. At 8 p.m. that evening, we have Blue Raw, which is our virtual kickoff event to orientation. Students will be able to tune in their room, and I think we have some pretty engaging activities to get students thinking about and seeing one another. So we're excited for that. September 6th is when we encourage you to come back, and we know there's been a lot of questions around, can I stay after the move-in process throughout the course of that week? And students are certainly allowed to stay. However, we do have to add the caveat, we will have limited services on campus. That includes dining, and we'll talk a bit more about dining, but they won't be in full service that week. You'll have limited access to locations to pick up food until Sunday, September 6th, so that's important to keep in mind. And our staff, we're still in training, we're prepping for the year, and so there won't be any planned activities or community building efforts. So we do really recommend that you go home, spend some more time there, and then understand that when it's time to come back. But of course, we understand that distance might be too far, and you need to stay the week. So either way, we're looking forward to seeing you at that virtual Blue Ra event on Sunday, September 6th at 8 p.m. In the housing addendum, contract addendum email, we did reference a quarantine and isolation bag. This is really designed as a quick grab and go bag if you need to move to quarantine or isolation quickly. During this time, you'll be unable to return to your room until you're cleared by health officials. So planning ahead for some of those easy to forget items just might be really helpful. And we found that, again, from some of our partner institutions that are saying this is just a helpful tool. Some of the items, and we listed a full list in that email, so please refer back to that. It's also located on our housing website, our COVID-19 updates page. But some of those items might include extra phone chargers, any medication, a thermometer or masks that you'll need, several changes of clothes for that time, toiletries, some distracting items for the 2 weeks, maybe outside of homework or your computer. We'll be getting plenty of screen time, so maybe a crossword would be nice if people still do crosswords. And it's good to know a number of our rooms will have bedding. So we recommend students maybe pack an extra set of bedding. It's nice to have that kind of comfort and the smell of your own laundry. But we will have some rooms that will have bedding in there, so you can look forward to that. Speaking of that isolation and quarantine bag, I want to touch very briefly on those isolation and quarantine spaces. All of these isolation and quarantine rooms, they're regular student rooms located on both sides of campus. It'll be very similar, these rooms will be very similar to what you'll see or what you have seen maybe on tour of campus and what you'll move into next week. For the privacy of these residents, we're not disclosing the location of these spaces, but they are located on campus and are separate from floors where other students who are not isolated and quarantined will be living, so it's separate from those floors. If a student does fall ill and moves into one of these spaces, they'll be checked in with by phone, either by housing staff or student health regularly. So we're not going to put them there and leave them. We are absolutely checking in on routine to make sure, both from a medical standpoint, they're doing well, and from a mental health standpoint, that they're still able to connect and attending class potentially as necessary. I mentioned that we will provide bedding. Good to bring your own to have that kind of comfort. And folks have asked, can they leave? Like under what circumstance can students leave these spaces? For these isolation rooms, and these are for students who have a confirmed case of COVID-19, they do have a private bathroom, and we're asking that they do not leave their space unless in an emergency. They should have the amenities that they need there, meal delivery service as well. So everything they should need in that room, only leaving it in an emergency. For quarantine spaces, they may leave their room to use the restroom or other essential reasons, as might be outlined by student health. And again, they'll be in contact to an extent where they can define what those would be, but cannot leave that floor or the room except for those essential reasons. So that's a bit about isolation and quarantine. Wanted to clear the air on some of those pieces. More information can be found on our housing website in regard to that. That references both our COVID-19 updates page on the housing website and the 2020-2021 Residence Hall Handbook, and that has a lot of the adapted policies that we'll be using this year in regard to COVID. A point I do want to hit on, this is my last piece on this slide before we move to some other components, is community development. Some questions have come around about, like, will my student be able to engage with other people, with the RAs and who's on the floor? And I'm really happy that this is something I think we do a little different at Stout, but our model around community development has always been about personal interactions over programming. So we know that we're not building communities around bringing together folks around a movie night or a game night. We're doing it based on good authentic one-on-one interactions. And so while we won't go door to door encouraging large group hangouts, we will be intentionally and routinely reaching out to each resident, connecting one another through common interests and classes, encouraging outdoor activities while we still have the weather for it, and programming virtually to allow spaces for mixing and mingling and, you know, just to be kind of college silly. So there is no surefire method that is going to work, but I do think we have a good amount in our toolbox, and we naturally excel at using personal interactions over programming. So we'll be doing a lot of work on this year for sure. On the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the items, some of the health and safety items that might help in the halls. When students arrive in the parking lot for move-in, every resident gets 2 masks. Please bring your own fashionable items from home. We know how nice it is to wear that swag from your local vendor, your local mask vendor. But we'll provide you 2 masks. You'll get a digital thermometer and a really cool door puller made by UW-Stout students. That's made right here on campus, which is pretty cool. In that packet, you'll also get a coupon to get your dining to-go container, and we'll talk about that a bit more. In terms of cleaning protocols, I know this is on a lot of folks' mind. Our bathrooms will be cleaned and disinfected minimally once per day and once over the weekend too. We've worked a lot on making sure we can hit the rounds as needed. And in regard to our common areas, our services will also be touched minimally once per day. And so we have that at the forefront of our mind as we're keeping all of our staff and students, or creating as safe of an environment as we can. In regard to laundry, that will still be available, $1 per load as usual for a wash, $1 for a dry. And those will also be touched daily by our staff. We will have wipes down in that area, in those laundry areas. So we are encouraging students to wipe down those machines before and after each use. That's just a general good practice. We've advised that really for use of any external unit or something different that students are touching. It's just good to maybe wipe down ahead and after use. In regard to cleaning students' rooms, maybe this is where that comes in best. Students are expected to clean their own rooms. We're expecting folks to bring their own cleaning supplies to help keep that clean. And in terms of cleaning up messes on the floor, vacuums and such, we will have those available for emergencies. But if you have a vacuum, a smaller unit you can bring, that we certainly wouldn't discourage that. So that is a mouthful on housing. I can't express enough. Again, we have some of our staff here and we're excited to welcome the rest of our students to campus. We're looking forward to that. And I know another big part of that operation is the dining operation. So with that, I'm going to hand off to our Director of Dining, Justin Cron, to talk a bit more about what that operation will look like. Justin, off to you.
Thanks, Adam. I'm going to echo Adam's comments. We are really excited to get the students back on campus and have that energy back. We've been preparing for this all summer. It's been great working with Adam's housing staff and having them come through our facilities. It's been a lot of fun. First and foremost, I'm just going to give you a little brief overview of how dining will look in the fall. There's been some questions too about, well, what's open and when. Right now, currently we have the Blue Devil Market open from 8 o'clock in the morning to 3:30 p.m. And that's the only facility that's open until September 6th. On September 6th, when students come back, the cafeterias will open and we will resume our regular academic scheduling of our dining operations. So in both retail and cafeteria operations, have no fear. We're going to have a lot of freshly prepared items to choose from. Sure, our menus may be modified, but that's to facilitate quick service and assist in social distancing requirements. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both Commons and North Point cafeterias. Both Commons and North Point cafeteria are available only to residential students who are living on campus. That's just so we can help maintain social distancing requirements. But we'll be serving many of your favorites. There's been some questions on that. So we'll have grill, pasta, pizza, kitchen classics. You'll have deli sandwiches, entree salads, tacos. And with that, the student will be able to get one entree. They'll they'll be able to get a hot veggie, a starch, 2 sides, a choice of dessert, and beverages. So the students will have a lot to choose from. Now in our facilities, in our dining rooms, our lounge spaces, in our outside seating areas, they are set to maintain the 6-foot social distancing requirement. But that doesn't mean roommates can't go out and sit together. We have several tables and spaces where they can dine together, still adhering to that 6-foot social distancing requirement. Masks are required when you come into our dining facility. A student may unmask when they are eating or drinking their beverages, but we do ask them to remask when upon completion of their meal. Excuse me. For those students who are sick or isolating, we do have a recovery meals program. The recovery meals program are for those students who are sick, isolating, or quarantined. They can get that through our Transact mobile ordering application, and these meals will then be delivered during designated times to the student's residence hall and delivered by our housing staff. Reusable takeout containers will also be issued to every residence hall student, and each residence hall student will receive a paper token when they arrive on campus. So when they come to dine with us, they can turn in that ticket and get the reusable takeout containers in the cafeteria locations. All of our dining locations are using takeout and to-go materials. That just increases the flexibility for the students to dine anywhere on campus in lounge spaces or back to their rooms. Or again, in Wisconsin, let's enjoy some of that outside weather too while we still can. In retail dining, that is open for both on and off campus students, faculty, and staff. These menus and stations have also changed to facilitate quick service to move people through the operations a lot more quickly. Also, this is the first time we're doing this. We are also having baseline specials for those on-campus residents in retail locations. That really increases the variety and the convenience for those students who are dining on campus. We also have our Transact mobile ordering application. This will be used in both retail and cafeteria facilities and for our recovery meals. The Transact mobile ordering is you can download it on your mobile device. You'll be able to choose your entrees. You'll be able to pay online, and then you can pick up to avoid those lines in our dining locations. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy.
Thanks, Justin, and special thanks to Adam and Justin. Housing and dining have been working tirelessly this summer to make sure both operations are ready to go for fall. So I'm going to talk a little bit about student activity and engagement, and specifically student org leaders have received information about required event registration. So through Connect, student org leaders, and I know it's working, we already have numerous events that have been registered through that online process. That will help us with contact tracing should there be a need to follow up with students who were part of a particular student org event that took place. Of course, any student org events that take place have to follow all of our requirements, and we have had to make some difficult decisions about some events and activities that can't occur because we don't think it can be done in a safe enough way. But that said, there are still literally all of our student organizations are still moving forward, even if it's virtually. But depending on the organization, some will still be holding in-person meetings or events or programs. And sports and recreational and instructional clubs, if they have not, will soon be getting the information about which of those activities can occur in a safe way and which actually need to be suspended for this semester, similar to some of our athletic events that the WIAC has canceled for this fall due to safety concerns. So there will be plenty of opportunities for involvement and engagement. Our student orgs, I know, are excited and are up to the challenge for figuring out how to do this in this new environment. So there will be both, as I mentioned, in-person and virtual activities. And I want to highlight, because for our returning students, you all know about the Backyard Bash. Of course, that would not be an event that we could hold safely. And the Backyard Bash for our new students is where you get to learn all about what student organizations and activities there are for you. That event is still going to happen. It's going to be held virtually. Our crew that has been working on that has done just a bang-up job, and so that will be on Tuesday, September 8th from 5 to 7. And so there's information out on Connected and student involvement about how to do that. And we did have a question that came in prior to tonight about voting, and so that's an important part of engagement, civic engagement. And so I am happy to report that yes, there will be a voting site on campus. It will be over in the Sports and Fitness Center in November during the national election. So students who live on campus, residential students, will absolutely have the opportunity to vote on campus, and off-campus students, of course, you have to vote in the ward for which your residence is. I also want to just mention as we go to the next slide, because I know there's some questions that have come in about transfer students, and transfer students, just so you know, you are welcome to come back in time for those events on Sunday, September 6th. You are also welcome to wait and return to campus if you'd like right before when classes start. We know that transfer students have unique needs often from first-year students, and so we have created an online virtual orientation for you, and you can certainly contact Britta Miller, who works with our orientation for new students, and she can send you more information about that, and you can also find it on the website. So for transfer students, again, due to your unique needs, we have multiple ways for you to engage, but it really is your choice for when you would like to come back. Just a note about another important area of student engagement, which is athletics and recreation. The fitness center and the climbing wall fees have all been waived for students for the fall, so there is no cost for those facilities. Obviously, we have to adapt, just like with many things. So open recreation is by reservation only. And again, there's more information about that on the website. I think you probably already, many of you have heard that regular season and championships have been canceled for fall sports. And just again, a shout out to our athletes. We know this is hard, especially if you're in one of those sports. So we appreciate your understanding for all of our athletes, how challenging this is. There has not been a decision yet about winter sports, so that will be coming at some point soon. And please know that whatever recreation and athletic activity that you are engaging in, that still those social distancing and masks are required. And please, the University Recreation website is the place for all information as it relates to athletics and recreation. By now, our first year students have all received their laptops. If for some reason they were mailed to your home, you didn't get one, please contact our IT folks. They'd be happy to help you, but to the best of my knowledge, I do believe that nearly all of our first year students have received their laptops. For our returning students, if you have at least a 2-year-old laptop, you will have the on-campus laptop exchange. If you still have, again, not gotten that laptop that was supposed to be mailed to you, and you're moving in, let's say this weekend, please let someone know that, and we can hopefully arrange for that on-campus pickup. And then laptop exchange will occur in the MSC ballrooms the 3rd through the 11th. And for our returning students, you will be getting an email. As always, watch your UW-Stout email. That is where you get information. You will get the information to sign up for a time. Again, we really have to manage that well, so please, returning students, make sure you sign up for a time. So want to spend some time talking about testing because since our last forum, this is of course changed for us as we've had access to some opportunities for testing that came about in just the last few weeks. So for that conversation, it's really important that I'm able to explain to you a good comprehension of the two types of testing because they are different. So PCR testing. This is the test that is given to those individuals who are displaying symptoms. So if you are symptomatic, you will likely, based on a conversation with a medical professional from Student Health, and really important to know, we don't want anyone just showing up at Student Health. You always need to call first. In this COVID time, they have special arrangements and see COVID patients in one part of the facility and other patients, because we of course provide other kinds of care besides COVID care over in Student Health. But it is critical that you are always calling for an appointment and not just showing up. Symptomatic students can get the PCR test at Student Health. And that is about a 24 to 48 hour turnaround time. If you test positive from the PCR test, you will move to a self-isolation room. And depending on the scenario by which you present in Student Health when you are tested, it's likely you might move to a self-isolation room immediately actually upon the test occurring. Again, those will be handled on a case-by-case basis as a medical professional has asked you about where you have been and other things. But for the most part, until that test comes back, you're going to be placed in isolation. If it is, and if you are positive, if that test comes back positive, then what's called contact tracing starts. At UW-Stout, we are in the process of training 12 individuals to be contact tracers, and you will be contacted. It's really important if you are contacted that you answer that phone and you cooperate and talk with them. And if you're an on-campus student, it will be by a Stout person. If you're off campus, it is likely to be, might be public health, but we will also have Stout individuals doing tracing for off-campus students. And all of this is, of course, in conjunction with public health. If you test negative, then you're good to go for the most part. And of course, if there's continued concerns, you will be following up with Student Health. But you self-isolate. And again, as Adam indicated, we have self-isolation spaces set aside in one of our residence halls, and in those bathrooms, that is with a private bath, and you are asked, you should not be leaving that space until we know, that either you tested negative or you've been cleared by a medical professional to leave. So that's our PCR testing. The next testing is the one that for those of you who are residential students, you received that information via your Stout email this week about the housing contract addendum we needed you to sign. And this is the antigen testing. This is required for all residence hall students. What it does is it helps us know early before symptoms are showing that someone may have tested positive for COVID. We're planning on testing all residence hall students approximately 12 times per semester, which means roughly every 2 weeks. This will be available. We're setting up because we simply would not be able to do that out of our existing Student Health Services facility. So we're setting up an alternative location where students will sign up online for their time. They will be there. We think we'll get better at it as the semester goes on, less than an hour, and they get the result back from the testing site literally within, we think we'll be able to get it down to a half hour, 45 minutes. But at the start of it, while we're working out some of the kinks, we may need a little bit more time. This will be testing asymptomatic students. So those who have not been known to be exposed necessarily to anyone and who are displaying at this time no symptoms. We will be taking temperatures of students before they are tested with the antigen test. So if someone does have a fever, we'll be deferring the antigen test and actually referring them to student health for the PCR test. If there is a positive test, similar to that positive PCR test, you're going to be asked to self-isolate. And if there's a negative test, no follow-up is needed. We eventually may be adding in other screening testing of random cohorts of students, but we know that will not be right away at the start of the semester, but likely later on in mid-semester. So our focus really is on those residence hall students and that population. We're still finalizing some details. Our intent is to start this the week of September 21st in full force. It could even be the week before with a little bit softer opening. It's dependent upon when the final tests arrive. So we were able to secure this. All the UW system campuses are engaging in this type of antigen testing. And so more details to come. By the way, just so everyone knows, this is not the test as they refer to it, the one that goes all the way up to your brain. This is a it's a nasal swab. It is not as intrusive as the PCR tests. So on the next slide, you can see just a graphic that shows the positive test result. It's also possible you might get tested at home. You might get tested somewhere else, and as a student, you test positive. We are asking all students that you call either the Dean of Students Office or Student Health to notify if you have received a positive test that you weren't tested on campus. Obviously, if you're tested on campus, we're going to know. And then residential students will be moved to that isolation space. Off-campus students will be contacted if you have a positive case or if you report to us that you have positive. In all likelihood, you've already been contacted by public health, but if you have not, you will be contacted by them. And they will work with you for our off-campus students about where you would isolate if that were to be the case. And those are handled on a case-by-case basis. So if you're an off-campus student who tests positive, public health is going to ask questions about how many roommates do you have? Do you have another place that you can locate? And they also have a contract with a hotel in town if they do have to self-isolate anyone in the community that does not have another alternative. So off-campus students are handled a little bit differently, but the process is the same because we're following public health guidelines that you have to self-isolate if you are positive. We've had a couple questions with this I'll just address right now. So if you test positive, or if you have to self-quarantine, can you go home? The answer is yes. You can do that. We just need you, we'll be talking with you anyway, so we just have to know that that's where you're going so that that constant communication can continue to occur. And then we also had a question about if they have to quarantine. So now it's not isolation, but they're just quarantining. Perhaps their roommate tested positive and they have tested negative and aren't displaying symptoms, but we're going to quarantine them for a few days. Or there might be another reason they're in quarantine waiting for results. And they're in a single room. No, I'm sorry, you can't stay in that room. We do have a specific locations identified for both isolation and quarantine, and you do have to move to those. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is in terms of meal delivery and other things. We have to sort of make sure that we have the right locations and we know exactly where things are going at all time. But it's also because we're paying attention even more than we already are to enhance cleaning in those quarantine spaces. So you do, even if you're in a single room, you do have to move to the quarantine space. So really, it's all about doing everything we can to be safer at Stout. We, again, can't say enough how much we all want to be here. And so what we need everyone do to really support that successful opening is to follow all of the policies and guidelines. If you have questions, please ask. We ask that when you see others who aren't following those guidelines to please step up and to step in and to let them know that everyone needs to do their part. to participate in the testing protocols. For our residence hall students, this is a requirement. Please answer your phone. As the mom of a college senior and one who's been out for 2 years, I know, and it's a point of frustration for me when they don't answer when it's a call, but they respond to a text. Public health contact tracing is done via a call. So please answer your phone, even if it's an unknown caller. In the event that it is public health, we need you to participate in the tracing. We've been pushing all year, all summer. Please get the flu vaccine. Don't wait, vaccinate. And again, for our first year residential students, we've asked if you did get the flu vaccine this summer. That will help us in our planning for a flu vaccine we hope to implement on this fall on campus. And please just mask up, back up, wash up. Those 3 simple things can really go a long way. And we want you to take care of yourself. Again, student health is integral to everything that's happening with this pandemic, but our counseling center is here and they will be engaging both in person and in telehealth with our students. And there's a new app already available. You can find this information on the counseling center website that anyone can download, that is available for those, perhaps just those short-term kinds of resource help that you may need, ways to maybe help a friend. There's just tons of resources there because it's normal. It's normal to feel anxious about what this fall is going to bring. So that's a resource already there available for you if you'd like. And we, as our chancellor mentioned, will continue to monitor the situation. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Phil Lyons, who's going to answer some of your financial questions.
Thank you, Sandy. Good evening, everyone. As Sandy said, my name is Phil Lyons, and I'm the Vice Chancellor for Administration. You know that you're in the home stretch when you get to the financial questions. They've put me second to the last slide, so I will give you kind of a very quick overview of some of the frequently asked questions about tuition and fees that we get. So I'll start with tuition. I get one of the questions I get asked frequently is, will you be discounting the price of tuition? And what our philosophy and our statement is that whether we provide online, hybrid, or in-person classes, that we're going to continue to deliver a high quality learning experience for our students in accordance with tuition set by the legislature. Honestly, tuition is really primarily covering the outstanding faculty salaries that we have, and instruction is always going to be high quality no matter the modality. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about fees. There are really 3 different types of fees. You might see on your bills segregated fees. Segregated fees cover such things as alternative transportation, which is the busing system, the health and counseling center, campus recreation, our campus card operations, the student centers, intramurals, and textbook rental. Another fee that you will see is the UW-Stout fee. The UW-Stout fee is our technology fee, and it covers the laptops that your students will pick up. It covers the software that's on those machines, comes with a backpack. It helps pay for the network, email, wireless, and things that are central to instruction at UW-Stout and sit within the information technology area. And the third set of fees are the auxiliary fees. And those include such things as dining and housing, parking as an auxiliary fee. And you will see 3 different fees, potentially 3 different fees on your bill that are dining related. Every student pays the dining board cost. It's a $952 fee. That covers all of the labor. It's the same for all students. And then when you pick a dining plan, those are your dining funds. And then I've been asked, what is Baseline Plus? And Baseline Plus is essentially a debit system, which is reimbursable at the end of the year, but it's good in the bookstore. It's good for copy machines. It's good for a whole lot of things. One of the questions I get asked is, are there plans to refund segregated fees? And while some of the services are not being offered, there's a lot of expense that comes with just getting our facilities and our activities COVID safe. So those structural costs that are required to maintain our activities and our fee-funded services and facilities comes with an additional cost, so the answer there is no. The segregated fees are different from the auxiliary fees. The auxiliary fees, we did do some refunds last spring, but at the present time, we don't have any plans to refund those housing and dining fees because we don't have any plans to close the campus. As our new leader in the system, President Thompson says the UW's open for business. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to close before we open up to Q&A with a reminder of where you can continue to get information. So students, check your Stout email. It's very important to be tuned into this semester and always. So please pay attention to your emails. We will have announcements in Campus Life Today, which is our daily correspondence out to students. Parents and students, I encourage you to continue to watch the COVID-19 website. We continue to keep this site updated with information. It will drive you via links to different areas of campus where you can continue to dig into information about dining and housing and other areas of campus life and academics. So please continue to watch the COVID-19 website for those updates. We will continue to push out information via our social media channels. And if you have specific questions about operations during fall that are COVID related, please continue to use the COVID-19 update website. It's listed there on your screen. The reason we encourage you to do this is because we can triage the questions that come into that account and push it out to the specific people that it needs to go to. That way you're not trying to find your way across campus in terms of the person to whom you should be speaking about your questions. So that's a clearinghouse from which we push out information to the experts on campus. And parents and family members and supporters of students, if you haven't signed up for the Stout Fam newsletter, this is a great source of information for you as the semester progresses. And if you go to the URL listed on the screen, that is where you will find the interface and the form to fill out in order to register for that regular newsletter. And we're trying to push out information in as organized and clear as a fashion so that it can reach you through various channels. But if ever you have questions, you know you can reach out to Stout personnel to get those questions answered. Again, if they're COVID related, please use the COVID-19 update email address. And with that, we are going to open it up for Q&A. And I know our moderator has been collecting questions and keep them coming, and we will respond during the next half hour, and then anything we don't get to, we will post online.
Good evening, everyone. We'll start with a couple of questions around testing. The first one is, what is the protocol for students that have tested positive for COVID over the summer?
We asked a question, so for off-campus students, there really isn't anything that they would necessarily have to do, unless, of course, they're under orders right now not to start the semester by being on campus and are in self-isolation. We asked on the housing addendum that question, have you tested positive? I think we said June 1st. Is that right, Adam? Yeah, Adam's nodding. So if you've tested positive since June 1st, we just ask that you tell us that because you are exempt from the initial rounds of testing, the antigen testing. So we won't be hounding you to sign up for a time to come in. So you should answer that, and then our student health services will receive that information of those who have tested positive and ask you for the documentation on that. And then we won't be having you engage in the antigen testing for, I think it's at least 90 days. That might change, but that's the current protocol.
Thank you. And one more testing question. If a student tests positive via the antigen test, will they be given a follow-up PCR test to reduce the risk of a false positive?
As of today, yes, but this is another area that changes regularly. So as of today, what I would tell you is our guidance with public health is indicating that yes, if a student tests positive with antigen, we are still then administering, we're treating that as a presumptive positive and then also giving the PCR test to confirm. That could change because again, this is changing all the time, but in our county, that is the approach that we are still taking as of today.
Thank you. So moving on, we have several questions related to quarantine and isolation. So the first one is about what students need to bring with them in quarantine and isolation. And specifically, there's a question about, so there was some talk about bedding. But the question is, will bedding be provided if it's desired? And then also, will they have access to laundry or will they need to bring enough clothes and towels for 14 days?
Yeah, those are all great questions. And I would definitely say one of the first stops would be to look back at that housing contract addendum email where we put that to-go bag list in there. I think that has a lot of items that would be really helpful to have with you. And I did see a couple questions in there, like if we don't have a bag, is that okay? Or can I pack one in the moment? I really want to clarify that it is not a mandate in any way to have a bag. It's really just a heads up to help you prepare. We want, if this were to happen, we want this to be a smooth transition for you. And we just think this would be a helpful tool. So check that list. That would be a really helpful piece to know what you want to bring with you to isolation and or quarantine. But I do think definitely enough spare changes of clothes, items, your homework, your textbooks, your computer, chargers. The question in regards to bedding, we do have bedding in these spaces. A number of our rooms do have bedding that we're prepared for. As we're preparing, not knowing exactly how many people are going to be in those spaces, we'll kind of flex that accordingly for where we need to put bedding. But you can bank that a number of our rooms will have bedding. I would say it is, for the time that you might be in there, it would be helpful to bring an extra set though. I would just really advise that you bring your own set in addition to that. In regard to laundry, which I think is another part of that question, I know this does put folks in a tight spot, but for the health and safety of the buildings and the people who are there, we are asking for students in isolation to not leave their space. And again, isolation is for folks who have tested positive for COVID-19, and so they will be asked to stay in that space. So I would advise, and this is where that bag would come in handy. Maybe you have your regular towel that you're using in your traditional room, your residence hall room, and that to-go bag has maybe 2-3 towels ready to go if that's what you think you would need in that space. And that's where the bedding might come in handy, extra pajamas, extra t-shirts, extra sweatshirts, that's where that to-go bag would be really helpful. So won't have access to laundry in isolation. And I mentioned in quarantine, there are no restrooms in the quarantine room, so you'll be able to leave to use the restroom on the floor and any other essential needs that you might have. But otherwise, we'll be asking that you do stay inside your room for quarantine and especially for isolation. Meredith, did I hit all parts of that question?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks.
Another question related to quarantine. So there's an example in the questions about a student that regularly gets fevers due to allergies. Could you comment if that person would need to quarantine due to having that symptom of a fever?
So in that case, what we're going to ask that student to do is share that information with student health, and then they will make a recommendation and decision around, in that particular case, how that should be handled for that student.
Okay, and then one other question related to quarantine and isolation. Are the isolation and quarantine spaces different? Are they in different locations?
Yeah, great question. Yes, the isolation and quarantine spaces are in 2 different locations, right? We're not mixing those students together in any capacity.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to questions related to housing and move-in. We have a couple of questions related to transfer students. Should they arrive on September 6th And do they participate in the same orientation activities as the freshmen?
Yep, so transfer students really do have a choice if they want to arrive on the 6th or come back on this anytime on the 7th or on the 8th. That's really up to them. The reason for that is transfer students, it's such a catch-all term, right, for a wide range of student experiences. If you are a transfer student who feels like you would really benefit from that full-blown orientation, then you are welcome to come back on the 6th. If you you feel like I just need to look at the online stuff and I'm good, then you are welcome to come back at any other time in there. It truly is whatever you think is best for you.
Okay, thank you. And in the residence halls, are the laundry machines coin operated?
Right, actually our laundry machines are all card operated. They use the contactless ID card that you have, and that the baseline plan that Phil was talking about earlier, that money just goes right into there. So it's actually super nice not to have to lug around a chunk of change every time you do laundry. You can add money to that card just as easily as it would be to gather your quarters. So all of that runs right through your card.
Thank you. And one other question related to the residence halls, will vacuums be available for students to use?
Great question, and those would typically run through our front desk to be checked out, and those are closed this semester for health and safety. So we won't have them readily available. I will say we'll have them in use for an emergency if there's something that we need to clean up, but I would bank that they would not be readily available in Red Cedar or in any of our traditional style residence halls.
Thank you. There are a few questions related to textbooks, specifically when and how students pick up textbooks, and if that differs based on if they're an on-campus or off-campus student.
So for our off-campus students, if you're already back in Menominee, we'd love you to make arrangements to come get those now. Because textbook rental is ready for you. So again, to try to reduce density, and students have been already getting their textbooks. So off-campus students, you can start that process whenever. Please go to that website and look there how they have their process set up for you to do that. But you do not have to wait. They are already in process for that. And Adam, do you want to talk about how that's going to work for residential students?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, so we're excited for this process. A great collaboration with textbook rental. But when you signed up to move into your residence hall on whatever day that might be, we are alerting textbook rental that you'll be coming that day. And so they are kind of pre-packaging all the textbooks for students who live on campus. So when you have that 2-hour block that you'll be unloading your items, once you're done unloading everything, the idea is that you'll go to textbooks, pick those textbooks up, pick up your card at Campus Card, and then you'll have all of that in your room, or to bring home and read that whole week before opening, before we start the school year. So not encouraged there, but the only caveat to that would be at the end of the day, if you have one of the last times to move in, you would kind of flip that process. Once you arrive, go get your textbooks first so that we can get those situated and taken care of, and that ID card right away. So everything's prepackaged, kind of nice.
Okay, thank you. And then one other similar question related to ID cards, the process for getting ID cards.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Again, embedded in the move-in process, we'll take your, for our first year students, we'll take your picture in the parking lot when you arrive. That'll be your ID picture, and we'll have a whole station set up for that. That ID card will be printed at the campus card office. And again, once you're done moving your items in, you'll go pick up that ID card kind of along the path as you before you pick up your textbook. So that'll be available that very first day when you move in.
And for off-campus students, Campus Card's open now too. So you can come now if you're back in town or when you get here. And again, you only, not everyone needs a new card. You don't need a new card as an upper class student every year. So it's only for those students who need that card.
Okay, thank you. Changing topics to academic related questions. You talked about labs and study rooms and how people will arrange to use those. Will the studio spaces be available for art students?
Yeah, so we had each of our academic programs create the list, and so those spaces are coordinated by program, and they're based on the facilities needed for the students. So it's my understanding that yes, the spaces will be available, and they'll be identified in that virtual sign up. It's going to list by building the types of spaces and their location.
Thank you. And also on the academic topic, for hybrid courses, how will instructors communicate which students should come to class on which days?
That's a great question. And so you should be hearing from your instructor before the first day of class. So those communications are going out starting next week. And if you don't hear from your instructor, please don't hesitate to reach out to them.
Thank you. And then for online courses, there's a question about why these aren't all being offered synchronously.
Good question. So I guess I want to say that the online aspect, there's actually multiple ways to deliver the content. So we have a range depending on the type of the content that's being delivered. So these were decisions that were made as part of in consultation with the instructor based on the content. And we've actually had, in some cases, students that it's actually works better for them for it to be asynchronous as well due to other commitments or due to technology. So instructors were pretty intentional on going about that path. And so there's different types based on the different types of delivery and content areas.
Okay, thank you. For off-campus students, do they need to sign up for the walk and talk?
They do not need to sign up. We will have social distancing measures in place, so they can just come at any of those times that were posted, as well as there'll be information available in other ways about those hours, but they can just come when they're free, depending upon we've offered, I think, a large enough time frame that students shouldn't have to plan on more than a few minutes over there, but of course we'll be keeping people 6 feet apart, and so they may have to wait just a little bit in line if there's a rush.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to dining related questions, there are a couple of questions about the reusable containers. So could you talk about the rationale for using the reusable containers and who's responsible for cleaning them?
Sure, absolutely. We decided to use the reusable takeout containers because it gives the student a lot more flexibility. We have very limited seating in our operations, so we want to make sure that the students, if they feel the need to go back to their room to go outside, that they have the opportunity to do so. When the student moves to campus, they'll be issued a token by University Housing, and with that token, when they come to dine with us, they'll be given a clamshell takeout container and a 22-ounce tumbler. All the other items that they're receiving will be in a disposable type container for their sides, their desserts. And then what we're asking them to do is to dispose of those items and just keep the clamshell and the cup. So there's going to be a couple of drop-off locations as well. If that student takes that meal out with them, they can drop it off in the Commons Express or the North Point Mini Mart and receive another token for the next time they come and dine with us. So it doesn't have to sit there and live in their room. Or if they do dine in with us, they would return that right to the dish room upon leaving the facility. Now, when they do come dine with us and bring back their container, we will have a drop-off site, and actually in the Commons cafeteria, they'll come up the stairway, and it actually comes through the dish room first. So there's nobody really handling that until it gets to the dish room for proper cleaning and sanitation.
Okay, thank you. What happens if a student becomes sick and requires hospitalization? How does that work?
It would be the same process for anytime a student is sick and requires hospitalization. If that were to happen, I'm going to sincerely hope the student has been communicating with you that they're not feeling well, and that would be the next step. Again, I think this would be really, really rare, but at that point, once the student is hospitalized, HIPAA really does take over, and we actually can't get information often from the hospital directly at that point. However, the student, assuming we've had an opportunity to talk with the student, let's say they're in isolation and where their illness continued to expand, we're having someone phone them every day and check in with that student, and we're going to know if that's happening. And so we're likely going to know that that student is being hospitalized, and we're going to say to this that that's the next step, because the student's care is being managed by our student health services, who's in consultation if they need to be with someone else, including public health, right? Because if there's hospitalization for COVID, we're also in touch with public health. So I feel very confident that we would be telling the student they needed to notify. If it became a situation of, again, I so want to see this happening, but if it were to happen that it was began to be such a serious matter, the university could at that point make a decision to notify a parent that their student was going to be hospitalized. That's no different from how we handle that now. If a student is going to be hospitalized, we encourage them to make that call, and then if it is serious, we ultimately, in those kinds of scenarios, can make that decision.
Okay, thank you. Can students get a flu shot on campus?
Yes, so we also, in the housing addendum for on-campus students, we asked if you received the flu shot this summer, and that is to help for our planning. Our planning for residential students is, once we know how many vaccines we actually need, we're going to do our best to get as many as we possibly can. We already have several hundred here, and then we're actually planning to go out to the halls, and students will sign up, and we will be doing the vaccination right in the halls. We're looking at starting that at the end of September. Off-campus students can make an appointment at Student Health for a flu vaccine.
Okay, thank you. How do you use the blue card on campus, and how can you add funds to that card?
Justin, you want to take that, Justin?
Sure, absolutely. So when you sign up for a dining plan, those funds were loaded onto the student's blue card. And when they go into a dining facility, for those students on campus, they would say that they had a baseline dining plan, and that's how they would be purchasing their food and meals. For those students living off campus, they may have had a block plan purchase or put money on their FlexLine account for use in dining or other areas on campus, such as the service center, laundry, vending, things of that nature. It's really easy to add funds to the card. We have several machines on campus that you can actually add funds that way, or you can actually go on the eAccounts website and add funds online. And that information is found on the campus card website.
Okay, thank you. We have a few follow-up questions related to IDs. How late in the day is it open for students to be able to come pick up their ID?
The ID card office is going to have extended hours. I'm not sure which week they start. Justin, do you know? He's looking it up, I can tell.
I am looking it up.
But yes, they have extended hours typically. Well, of course, they're here every day right now, or with move-in, because students are getting their ID when they move in. That is till 6 o'clock every night. And then they do that first week, even after classes start, typically have extended hours.
Okay, and also related to IDs, do students that are fully online need to have an ID card?
They do not have to have an ID card, but they are welcome to come in and get an ID card. But they don't have to have one.
Okay, and then last question about IDs so far is, will lanyards be provided for the IDs, or should students bring their own?
I can offer a thought on that. When you move in, we provide a lanyard for your keys, and so you do have that tool to keep your items on. It's a slick lanyard. We don't provide a specific unit, and they sell those where you can pop your ID inside there or slip it in. They make phone backs that you can put an ID in as well. We don't provide those for you, but you can buy them. I've seen them at the university bookstore. You can find them online in different places. So those are tools. You see a lot of students with them on campus. You can maybe pop another credit card or some cash in there as well. So we don't provide them, but they are definitely available and you see them around campus.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick time check here. We just have a few minutes left in our session this evening, so we have time for a few more questions. There's a couple follow-up questions related to the flu shot. One is, are we requiring students to get a flu shot?
We are not. We're highly, highly, highly encouraging it, but we are not requiring it.
And do we know how much it will cost to have the flu shot on campus?
It is approximately $20, and it is put on the student's account.
Okay, thank you. And then a follow-up question related to quarantine. There are a couple of questions about if parents can drop off care packages for students that are in either isolation or quarantine.
I could offer a thought on that. I think we have a full mail service system and a full process on how we get mail and packages to students. If you would want to do that, I think to not have full contact with a potential positive case or a potentially infected person to bring those to the housing office, and we would be happy to get those delivered to the student. So we're in 170 Price Commons. You can either mail them if you'd like to mail them, or if you're close enough to be able to drop them off, we'd be happy to make sure they get delivered there.
Just as a reminder that this fall, there's no outside guests starting on that Sunday, September 6th in the residence hall. So you would have to take that to the housing office.
And one more question here. Will pots and pans be available for students to use in the kitchens?
Yeah, great question. We will not have those items available without a professional cleaning or disinfecting crew to keep those clean. We won't be providing them. So if students do plan on cooking their own meals and food items, they should bring their own and plan to clean those. In our kitchens, though, we will have wipes, sprays, and hand towels to wipe down areas as they're doing that, though. Not only will we be touching all those surfaces, but we encourage people to do so before and after use. So please bring your own equipment if you do want to be cooking, but the cleaning and disinfecting of those areas will happen on routine.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like we have time for one more question. How will instructors stay engaged with students given the changes in the course modalities?
That's a great question. So as I mentioned, we've had some very intentional professional development this summer, and we've been working with instructors about how to keep students engaged. And so I think it's going to depend, right? It's going to depend on the type of activity, but they are learning how to engage and using the tools kind of like what we're using with today. Different types of community building tools, such as Microsoft Teams and Collaborate within Canvas. There are ways to have activities in which folks come together and create discussion boards and other options for students to stay engaged. We also have visiting panelists, and all of our programs have program advisory committees with employers and alumni that also stay connected to our students. And so I anticipate that there'll be some discussion with guests. And so there's going to be a variety of methods, and I think that the instructors are really working hard on that. In some of our courses, we have different simulation tools and software packages available to have students perform different activities. So looking forward to a semester. It'll be different, but I think you'll find that there'll be new forms of engagement.
Okay, thank you. So we are at about 8 o'clock here, so we are out of time. There are a few questions that we didn't get to, so we will be posting responses to those questions online. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon and for your helpful questions.